The gallery of triumphs gleamed beneath the shifting light of the orbital prisms. Each fractured sunbeam slanted across polished floors and crystalline columns, drawing rainbows from the ancient banners of conquest and rebellion. Empress Ceres of the Nyari clutched the edge of her levitating seat, her knuckles pale against the shimmering alloy. Every gesture was calculated, every muscle taut with discipline. Only the deep ache radiating from her ruined leg betrayed her, and that she revealed to no one but herself. The reinforced exosleeve, sleek yet brutal, encased her thigh and calf, a constant cold reminder of the insurrection that had nearly claimed her life. The brace gleamed in the gallery's light, humming faintly with each shift of her weight, and drew sidelong glances from the Nyari elite clustered below. It was a monument to her survival, as much as to the sacrifices it had cost her. She scanned the assembly. Noble houses draped in starlight silks, the old guard of Nyari generals bristling with suspicion, the sullen cluster of Earth envoys. Outsiders in every way but their strategic importance. Her gaze lingered, almost against her will, on Marcus. Marcus stood just below the dais, his posture as crisp and motionless as the ceremonial banners, yet his eyes missed nothing. The ceremonial armor of the human sentinel, matte black, edged in Nyari blue, seemed to absorb the room's brilliance, and his unsettling calm made her skin prickle. He was a living embodiment of the pact with Earth, necessary, despised, yet impossible to ignore. Above the hum of ceremonial drones, the vizier's voice soared, rich and grandiloquent, extolling the peace forged in blood and the unity of two worlds. But the words faded for Ceres as Marcus's gaze found hers, steady and impossible to read. He inclined his head, just so, a silent acknowledgement. At the same moment her neural comm flickered with his thought, crisp as a blade. All clear, Empress. The intrusion stung. She suppressed a scowl, but a surge of irritation bloomed through her neural web. It was not her own warriors who protected her in this moment, but an outsider, a symbol of concessions and uneasy alliances. Suddenly, the air shimmered. A shriek of plasma, blue and blinding, tore through the far window. The blast was instant, savage, spraying crystal shards across the chamber. Ceres's heart hammered. Screams erupted, guards throwing themselves between her and the incoming fire. A second bolt split the dais, vaporizing two Nyari guards in a flash of ozone and white heat, and ripping her throne from its gravitic moorings. Ceres had a moment to register the sudden weightlessness before gravity reclaimed her, slamming her down. Pain lanced through her ruined leg as she crashed to the crystalline floor, exosleeve shrieking with overloaded circuits. For a heartbeat she saw nothing but spots, the world spinning around her. Then Marcus was there, cutting through the chaos. He moved with unnatural speed, dodging falling debris, firing a compact pulse pistol in precise bursts to cover their escape. In one fluid motion he hoisted her into his arms, holding her as if she weighed nothing. "Put me down," she spat, struggling against him, but her leg folded uselessly beneath her. Rage, humiliation, and pain blurred her senses. Marcus's voice was low, a calm counterpoint to the shrill alarms. "Stay with me, Empress. I have you." His words brushed her ear, filtered through the neural comm and his own lips. Energy bolts stitched the air behind them, incinerating banners and shattering support pillars. Nyari warriors crumpled in the crossfire, their armor no match for the unseen assailants. Each fallen soldier was a wound, and each step Marcus took was a fresh humiliation. He carried her through the smoke-choked corridors, weaving past crumpled statues and shattered glass. The ornate gallery of triumphs vanished behind them, replaced by the raw, functional gloom of the citadel's underbelly. They plunged into darkness, the labyrinth beneath the palace winding on and on, the air thick with the scent of plasma burns and scorched stone. She twisted in his grip, the exosleeve sparking with every movement. This is unacceptable. I command you. Her breath caught, torn by pain. Marcus did not falter, his steps steady and unhurried. My orders are clear, Empress, your safety above all else. He glanced down, eyes unreadable in the gloom. You can berate me when we're not targets. The indignity curdled inside her as he set her gently in a stark, windowless chamber. The walls were bare, the floor cold and unyielding. A single slab of a bench jutted from one side. Saris tried to push herself upright, pride forcing her to stand. Her leg buckled, sending agony lancing up her side. Marcus caught her before she could fall. His hands, deft, practiced, strangely gentle, supported her weight. He knelt beside her, examining the brace with clinical precision. The stabilizer's fried, he muttered, already unpacking a slim tool from his belt. She tried to jerk away, her voice tight. I can manage. You are not authorized. Empress, if I don't fix this, the damage could be permanent. His tone brooked no argument. The cold edge of his professionalism grated, even as she surrendered to necessity. He worked swiftly, the burnt metal scent mingling with her sweat and the sharp tang of pain. His knuckles brushed her thigh, fingers sliding beneath the searing exosleeve to disconnect ruined circuits. The touch was intimate, forced by violence and urgency, and she flinched despite herself. Marcus's face was all focus, eyes narrowed, jaw set. He did not look at her, only at the ruined brace and the angry, bruised flesh beneath. He was impersonal, careful and unyielding, saving her, though every moment of his touch reminded her that her own dignity had been stripped away by necessity and fate. At last, he finished. The brace sparked, then steadied, its internal systems humming weakly. Marcus let out a breath, meeting her eyes for a fraction of a second. She looked away, jaw clenched against the sting of humiliation and the confusion that lingered between them. Their breaths filled the silence, charged with pain, pride, and an unwelcome flicker of something more. In the depths of the citadel, beneath the weight of triumph and defeat, nothing felt certain except the closeness that lingered. Strange, unwanted, and undeniably real. Time blurred in the sterile glow of the hideout. The chamber's lumen panels cast an unyielding white over the smooth, featureless walls, the kind of light that left no shadows for secrets to hide in. The silence, broken only by the muted hum of filtration vents, pressed in close, thick with tension and unsaid words. Marcus moved with soldierly discipline, every motion measured and efficient. He checked the perimeter sensors, recalibrated the environmental shield, and prepared nutrient infusions with the same detached precision. Between those tasks, he returned to her side, tending her wound, adjusting the brace, making sure she would not be left weak or unprotected for a single instant. His focus was relentless, almost mechanical, and it stoked her anger more than any insult. Saris watched him through narrowed eyes, her breath sharp and shallow. The pain in her leg had faded to a dull ache, but the humiliation remained, a hot knot beneath her breastbone. My entire council saw you carry me away, she spat, her voice brittle. They saw their Empress helpless. Marcus didn't look at her as he connected a diagnostic wand to the exosleeve. You're a critical asset. Extraction was the only viable move. His tone was flat, the words cold as steel. She recoiled as if struck. A critical asset? She echoed, venom in every syllable. I am their sovereign, not some data core to be retrieved and shielded. His gaze met hers then, unwavering. That's exactly why you have to survive. The throne needs a mind, not a martyr. Saris seethed, pride crushed beneath the relentless logic of his response. She jerked her leg away as his fingers worked at the neural contacts along her thigh, but he simply caught her ankle, steadying her with gentle, unyielding strength. He pressed his thumbs along the edge of the brace, recalibrating the neural interface, and for a moment, blessed relief pulsed through the injury. She bit back a sigh, refusing to admit the pain had eased. "You don't have to pretend," Marcus murmured without looking up. "The stabilizer is working again. You should be able to walk. Carefully." She glared at him. "Don't presume to know what I need. You are not Nayari. You can't possibly understand." He didn't flinch. Instead, he tapped a command into his wrist comp, and her vitals appeared, ghostly overlaid on the interface. Heart rate, neural stress, pain indices, all laid bare, her body's secrets more intimately known to him than to any lover. The intimacy of it, so clinical, so detached, felt like a deeper violation. "Monitoring you is protocol," he said, reading her expression. "If something changes, I need to know before it's too late." "Get out," she snapped. "Leave me, Marcus. That's an order." For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. His voice, rougher now, held a different edge. "I can't. Your life is my responsibility, and I don't fail." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. For the briefest instant, the mask slipped. Saris saw the man beneath, the strain at the edges of his stoicism, the echo of loss or fear he would never confess. He turned away before she could read more, jaw clenched as he returned to his silent routine. He crossed to the surveillance console set into the far wall, hands gliding across the interface with practiced ease. Live feeds from fractured palace corridors flickered before him. Nyari soldiers evacuating civilians, emergency bots sweeping shattered halls, the remnants of her personal guard clustering for last stands. His eyes narrowed as he ran the feeds in reverse, searching for a pattern, for a ghost in the chaos. Saris shifted restlessly on the bench, watching him with a bitterness that coiled tighter with every passing minute. She could not ignore the efficiency with which he moved, the silent competence that had saved her life, and made her appear weak. She hated him for that, almost as much as she hated herself for needing him. Marcus froze, leaning in to magnify a grainy feed from the gallery entrance. He slowed the footage to a crawl. A shadow moved in the chaos, separate from the main attack vector. A figure in non-regulation armor, hand flashing a rapid gesture. He tapped the interface, isolating the frame. "There. Did you see that?" He zoomed in, stabilizing the image. She squinted at the screen. A gloved hand, 2 fingers crooked, thumb pressed. A signal. Familiar, but not Nayari. "What is it?" He glanced back at her, voice clipped. "Terran covert units use that signal. Orders to hold fire and secure the primary asset. It's not Nyari military protocol. It's ours." Saris's blood ran cold. "Ours? Meaning Earth's?" He nodded grimly, scrubbing through more footage. "Look, power packs here, off-world field generators there, all Terran tech. Not standard issue, but black market, used by rogue elements." She stared at the screen, horror and disbelief warring on her face. "So your presence is just coincidence?" Her voice was low, sharp as a blade. The loyal human hound, guarding the Empress from his own kind. His jaw tightened, eyes suddenly hard. "No, I was assigned here because of threats like this. Someone on Earth doesn't want you dead. They want you alive." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "Alive? For what? To parade before the council? Proof that the mighty Nyari must bow to Earth?" He shook his head. "A dead Empress is a martyr. A wounded ruler relying on humans is a pawn. They want to control you. Control the narrative. It's not about allegiance. It's about leverage." The word stung. Pawn. Saris felt it strike somewhere deeper than pride, striking the battered secret places she kept even from herself. The revelation soured the air between them, the trust that had barely begun to form crumbling under the weight of betrayal and manipulation. She turned away, every line of her body rigid with pain and resentment, and Marcus stood at the console, back to her, the screens flickering with the shadows of a world neither could claim as truly theirs. Suspicion widened the gulf between them. The safe chamber felt even smaller, the air charged and brittle as Ceres faced Marcus, her chin high, eyes storm-bright with challenge. She watched his every move, searching for cracks in the armor, for any sign that the man inside was more than duty and protocol. Her voice cut through the tense quiet, sharp as a blade. "Are you just following orders, or is your loyalty negotiable?" He looked up from the hollow screen, the soft blue light tracing the hard lines of his jaw. His expression was stoic, unreadable. "My orders are clear. Protect you. That's all." "That's all?" She let out a bitter laugh, stepping closer. "So if your superiors sent new orders, if they told you to stand aside and let me die, would you?" She watched him, daring him to look away. He did not. "I have never failed a mission. I won't start now." His voice was calm, but beneath it she heard something tense, a taut wire, ready to snap. Ceres wanted to tear through his composure, to find something real beneath that unwavering mask. "You are the face of my enemy. Do you understand that?" Her words trembled with exhaustion and fury. "I want to see anything but indifference in your eyes." His gaze hardened, muscles in his jaw working. "Indifference keeps you alive. Emotions get people killed." She scoffed, anger burning through her restraint. "I would rather die than be a pawn moved by someone who feels nothing." She shoved him, small but fierce, palms pressed to his chest. "Show me something, Marcus. Anything." He caught her wrists before she could pull away, the contact sending a jolt through both of them, a spark of heat and restrained strength. His grip was firm but not painful, his skin warm against hers. His voice was low, rawer than before. "You don't want to see what's in my eyes, Ceres." Her name on his tongue stripped away formality, exposing something naked between them. She met his gaze, her breath shallow. Rage, fear, humiliation, all combusted into something wild and desperate. She surged forward and kissed him, fierce and urgent, pouring every wound, every accusation, every longing into the press of her mouth. For a moment he was stone, unyielding, unmoved. Then, as if some final thread snapped, his restraint shattered. His arms crushed her to him, his mouth answering hers with raw hunger, answering need with need. Armor scraped her skin. Her brace was a distant memory as he lifted her, pinning her against the cold wall. It was a battle, violent and intimate, a silent war waged with mouths and hands. Her fingers tangled in his hair, nails raking the back of his neck. He gripped her hips, lifting her higher, anchoring her against him as if she were the only thing keeping him grounded. Their breaths collided harsh and ragged in the thin air. He tasted of salt and steel, of all the things she had been taught to despise, and now craved with a hunger that burned away doubt. She bit his lip, drawing a gasp, and he responded by deepening the kiss, devouring her as if he meant to stake a claim on every inch of her. Armor met exosleeve in a clash of metal and flesh. The brace dug into her skin, grounding her in the reality of pain and vulnerability. But she barely felt it. His hands mapped the lines of her body, reverent and rough, and her own hands slipped beneath the edge of his collar, tracing the pulse racing beneath his skin. For a moment, time collapsed. There was no war, no palace, no betrayal, only the heat between them, and the need to feel alive in a world that had tried to claim them both. When at last they parted, breathless and flushed, silence settled between them. a fragile truce, crackling with aftershocks. Marcus stepped back, arms braced against the wall, chest rising and falling in heavy, uneven breaths. Saris let her head rest against the cool surface, eyes closed, pulse thundering in her ears. Neither spoke for a long moment. The only sound was the distant whir of the environmental systems, the faint buzz of the holoscreen forgotten on the console. Suspicion remained, hovering between them like a live wire. But now it was laced with something else, undeniable and dangerous. They were no longer merely adversaries, nor quite allies. Something had shifted, irreversibly. When Saris finally moved, it was with new purpose. She straightened, hair tumbling wild around her shoulders, and met his eyes, finding not indifference, but a storm of conflict and longing. She saw herself reflected there, broken, burning, alive. She smoothed the front of her tunic, voice steady but softer. "If we're going to survive, we need a plan." He nodded, the old formality slipping back into place, but his eyes lingered on her a moment longer. "Agreed. First, we need to map out escape routes. There's a maintenance shaft 2 levels down. If we can reach it, we may be able to bypass the primary patrols." Saris limped over to the console, the brace humming as it adjusted to her movement. "Show me," she said, and together they bent over the flickering map, their shoulders almost touching. Marcus explained the logic of human tactics, how Terran soldiers would anticipate choke points, how to avoid predictable patterns. "Never double back unless you're certain you weren't followed," he said, tracing potential routes with a gloved finger. "And always have an exit you can reach in under 60 seconds. She countered with the intricacies of Nyari politics, the allegiances hidden beneath surface loyalty, the safe corridors that changed with a single whispered rumor. "We cannot trust the old tunnels," she warned. "The mining guilds have their own security grids. We need to bribe a controller or nothing moves unnoticed." Their exchange became rapid, strategic, a dance of minds as much as bodies. She showed him coded signals embedded in Nyari infrastructure. He taught her how to bypass Terran sensors with pulse jammers. As they worked, a bond grew, no longer adversarial, not yet trust, but something necessary and real. Plans overlapped, hands brushed as they reached for the same data tablet, the touch sparking a quiet, persistent longing that neither dared voice. Later, as Marcus passed her a ration pack, their fingers lingered just a moment too long. Saris caught her breath, her heart beating a little faster, and met his gaze. There was no indifference there now, only the echo of what had happened, and the promise of more. The silence between them was no longer empty, but charged with possibility, with danger, with hope. Marcus's hands moved quickly as he searched through Saris's ceremonial cloak, running his fingers along every seam, every fold, guided by instinct sharpened by years of war. Suddenly he felt it, a rigid line stitched into the collar, barely detectable. He drew a knife from his belt and slit the lining, exposing a sliver of black composite. He held it up, eyes narrowing. "Micro tracker, military grade. Someone's been broadcasting our position." Saris's breath caught. She stared at the device, horror dawning as the implication landed. "They've known, from the very beginning." Her voice trembled, dread curling in her chest like cold smoke. "They're coming." Marcus's face became all angles and purpose. He dropped the tracker, crushing it beneath his boot, then moved in a blur, holstering his pistol, slinging his rifle, snapping open his comm interface. "We have to move, now." He swept the room, gaze calculating. "There's an access conduit through the north wall. Leads to the geothermal vents beneath the citadel. Old, narrow, hard to track. It's our best shot." Already, his mind mapped out the escape, possibilities flickering behind his eyes. "If we're cornered, we hold them there. Last stand." Ceres's jaw set, her resolve hardening. Show me. Together, they prepared, moving as if some invisible wire connected their thoughts. Marcus set up crossfire positions, marking firing lines with the edge of his boot. Ceres checked the ancient stone for weak points, her fingers brushing dusty mortar, searching for the fault lines that centuries of conquest had left behind. Marcus handed her a pulse pistol, his grip lingering on her shoulder. A brief, electric contact. Stay behind me. No arguments, just survival. She met his eyes, reading the fierce protectiveness beneath the soldier's mask. You lead, I follow, but I fight. A small, crooked smile flickered on his lips. Wouldn't expect anything less. They loaded magazines, checked safeties, and crouched in the half-light, senses stretched taut. Footsteps echoed above, a growing thunder of boots on stone. Ceres's heart hammered in her chest, adrenaline sharpening every nerve ending. She remembered the first lesson of war. Trust your partner, or die. The main entrance exploded inward, smoke and debris billowing through the corridor. Marcus's rifle barked, each shot a precise answer to the chaos. Shadows fell, armored figures dropping with silent efficiency. Ceres flanked him, her own shots finding marks, muscle memory guiding her hand, the old fire of battle igniting within. A stun grenade bounced into the room, its blue charge humming. Marcus saw it first. Down! He threw himself over Ceres, wrapping her in his arms as the grenade detonated. The blast hammered the world sideways, ears ringing, vision swimming. Stone dust choked the air, and heat seared exposed skin. Marcus staggered, disoriented, blood running from a cut above his brow. He dragged Ceres behind a broken column, shielding her as fresh figures stormed the breach. Through the smoke strode Captain Varel, traitor to the Nyari crown. His armor was scorched, his eyes cold. He leveled a disruptor at Marcus, sneering. The mighty Earth Sentinel, bleeding for our Empress. How poetic. Ceres didn't hesitate. She snapped her pistol up and fired, her shot catching Varel's weapon, blasting it from his hand. But in the same instant, Varel's lieutenant fired, a searing pulse carving through Marcus's side. Marcus grunted, dropping to one knee, his hand pressed to the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark against the pale light. Still, he rose, teeth bared, paying a distant second to duty. Varel lunged, drawing a blade, but Marcus met him with brutal efficiency. He drove his rifle butt into Varel's throat, spun, and slammed him against the wall. They grappled, metal scraping stone, each man fighting for the upper hand. Ceres fired at the lieutenant, forcing him back, but her focus snapped to Marcus as Varel's blade caught his shoulder, scoring deep. Marcus roared, seizing Varel's wrist and twisting until bone cracked. He disarmed the traitor and drove his elbow into Varel's face, breaking the man's nose with a sickening crunch. One final blow sent the captain slumping to the ground, unmoving. Marcus sagged, breath ragged, blood dripping from 2 wounds now. He tried to stand, knees buckling. Ceres was at his side instantly, ignoring the agony in her own leg. Marcus, stay with me, she ordered, voice steel and fire. She dragged him toward the maintenance hatch, her hands slick with his blood, her legs screaming with every step. The corridor narrowed, darkness pressing in, but she refused to falter. He tried to protest. Leave me, you can move faster alone. She cut him off, eyes blazing. I do not leave my own, not now, not ever. She slung his arm across her shoulders, bearing his weight as they stumbled to the hatch. Her own body threatened to give out, but she gritted her teeth, summoning the last reserves of strength. At the ladder, Marcus slumped, consciousness flickering. She dropped to her knees, tearing open his uniform, binding the wound as best she could with a field wrap and trembling fingers. His eyes fluttered open, pain and apology mingling in his gaze. If they catch us, they won't, she said fiercely, activating his calm. The static cleared, and loyalist voices crackled through. Empress? Marcus? This is Ceres, she barked, shifting to cradle his head. We need extraction at geothermal vent 2. Now. Acknowledged. Teams inbound. She pressed her forehead to his, her breath hot and fierce. Hold on, that's an order. With strength born of fury and desperation, she gripped the ladder and hauled him upward, rung by rung. Marcus's weight threatened to drag her down, her exosleeve protesting with sparks, but she refused to yield. Each movement was agony, but her will blazed, unbroken. Behind them, alarms wailed. In front, the faint glimmer of loyalist beacons shone through the rising steam. Ceres's resolve burned brighter than any wound, her spirit carrying them both upward, toward safety, toward hope, toward a future yet unwritten. Marcus recovered in the Imperial medbay, Ceres at his side. The medbay hummed with a quiet efficiency, the sterile white broken only by the soft glow of diagnostic runes. Marcus lay on a gravcot, bandaged and pale, his eyes flickering between pain and restless alertness. Ceres sat close, her own body stiff with exhaustion, her fingers stained by the red and blue of his blood and her own. She tended his wounds with a care that surprised them both. The medics hovered nearby, but Ceres waved them away, insisting on cleaning the burns herself, smoothing synth skin over angry gashes, adjusting the monitors with a precision learned from necessity rather than protocol. Marcus watched her in silence, his soldier's mask slipping as she pressed a cool compress to his brow. "You don't have to do this," he rasped, voice rough but steady. "You're the Empress." She met his gaze, something fierce in her eyes. "I am. Which means I care for what is mine." He blinked, caught off guard by the gentleness in her touch and the iron in her tone. For a moment the walls between them thinned, letting in a fragile peace neither had known in too long. Outside the medbay, the Empire reeled. The evidence Marcus and Ceres had fought to obtain spread like wildfire: holobriefs, intercepted messages, the micro-tracker itself. The palace was awash in whispers and fury. The betrayal was laid bare. General Sarin, architect of the coup, named alongside the Terran conspirators who had orchestrated the attack from the shadows. When Ceres entered the Gallery of Triumphs once more, she walked on her own feet. Her brace clicked with every step, a hard metronome echoing beneath the vaulted crystal. She wore no crown, no veil, only the scars of battle and the indomitable weight of survival. The court fell silent as she reached the dais. Marcus, still weak but standing tall in the gallery's shadows, watched her from afar. With a steady voice, Ceres addressed her people, the senators, the generals, the alliance envoys. "You have seen me broken. You have seen me carried from this hall by a man not of our blood. Some called it weakness. I call it survival. I call it strength." Her eyes swept the crowd, challenging them to contradict her. "The enemy was among us. General Seren, trusted, honored, sold us to outsiders. The evidence is irrefutable." Gasps and murmurs spread through the ranks. Saren, stone-faced, tried to speak, but Ceres raised a hand and the guards moved in. They seized him, binding his wrists in shimmering force cuffs. The court recoiled, some in shock, others in shame. The Rogue Earth faction sought to make me a puppet. Instead, they forged me in fire. Ceres's words rang out sharp as a blade. The treaty that joined our worlds was never a chain. It is now our shield, reforged by truth, by pain, by blood. Alliance officers moved through the hall, rounding up the last conspirators. The Rogue Earth operatives were arrested, their plots dismantled. The treaty, once a symbol of her weakness, stood renewed, stronger, unbreakable. The Gallery of Triumphs shimmered with a new kind of light, forged in survival and unity. But Ceres's heart was restless. When the ceremony ended, she moved through the silent corridors, her mind turning over choices and regrets. The victory was hollow without meaning, without something, or someone, to tether her to the world she'd fought to save. She summoned Marcus to the throne room as the sun dipped low, staining the crystal walls with gold and crimson. He entered in his dress uniform, a fresh scar tracing his jaw, eyes steady but wary. He saluted. "Empress, you called for me." Sarah sat on the throne, regal but solitary. The chamber was empty save for them and the distant echo of guards. "Marcus Reeve," she began, her voice carrying across the marble. "Your service is concluded. You are dismissed from your post as my protector." He stiffened, uncertainty flickering across his face. He began to bow, formal and distant, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "But I am not finished." She rose, brace catching the light, and descended the dais. "I command you to remain, at my side, not as a sentinel, as my consort." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. For a breathless instant, the court, small cluster of advisors, lingering guards, gasped as one. Marcus stared at her, his mask cracking open. Shock and disbelief warred with something deeper, older, a longing he'd kept buried since the first day he saw her. "Ceres." His voice failed. He knelt, not as a soldier, but as a man undone. She touched his cheek, her hand trembling. "Rise. There is no one else I would trust to walk with me into whatever comes." The formalities ended. The chamber emptied, the whispers trailing behind as they left together. In the privacy of her quarters, the world faded to just the two of them. No crown, no titles, no weapons between their hearts. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, hands clasped, head bowed. "You've tied yourself to a soldier," he said quietly. "To a man who knows only how to fight and bleed. I am not made for courts, Ceres. I am not made for peace." She knelt before him, her hands gentle on his knees. "I have chosen you," she replied, voice sure. "Not because I need a protector, because I need you. Because you see me, not just the Empress, but the woman beneath the crown. And I see you." He looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I will fail. I will falter." "Then we will falter together," she said softly, "and rise again." He drew her into his arms, holding her as if she were both precious and unbreakable. She let herself be lifted, her brace creaking, scars glowing faintly beneath the thin fabric of her gown. He traced them reverently, lips brushing the pale, luminous lines that marked her body's survival and her soul's endurance. "Does it hurt?" he asked, thumb lingering over the oldest scar. "Only when I forget why I fought," she murmured. He kissed each scar, worshipful and gentle, and in his touch she felt whole, no longer fractured by violence or betrayal, but healed by love that burned slow and steady. In the quiet of that night, the Empress and her consort found peace, united by wounds and hope, forged in the crucible of survival. They began a new life, together, stronger than fear, braver than fate. 5 years later, Ceres stood on the balcony of the Sky Gardens, the city at peace below her. The towers of Niara rose like crystal blooms in the dusk, their lights reflected in the tranquil river winding through the heart of the capital. The air shimmered with the scent of alien blossoms, and the hush of contented voices carried from the terraces far below. Ceres's exosleeve, once an instrument of pain and shame, now gleamed in the twilight, its lines sleek and elegant, moving in perfect harmony with her stride. It was as much a part of her as the scars that marked her skin, no longer a sign of loss but a testament to endurance. Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting lightly on her shoulder. The warmth of his body and the steady cadence of his breath grounded her more surely than any anchor. She leaned into him, her dark hair mingling with his, the quiet intimacy between them a miracle forged from hardship and hard-won trust. His touch still sent shivers through her, even after all these years and all they had survived. "You're thinking again," he murmured, voice a low vibration against her ear. "About what comes next," she replied, her amber eyes reflecting the starlight. They glowed softly in the dusk, the intricate scars tracing her pale skin catching the city's radiant gleam. Her biosuit, torn and patched in places but form-fitting and strong, hugged her frame, a beauty both fierce and fragile, a reminder of everything she had endured. Marcus smiled, his hand splaying over her stomach. "Peace, for once. It suits you." She snorted, bearing the hint of sharp teeth in a grin. "You think so? I'm not convinced the court agrees." "Let them talk," he said, lips brushing the edge of her jaw. "They're too busy trying to outdo each other in subtlety to remember how to fight." She turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "You're not wrong. You know, you have become alarmingly adept at courtly intrigue." He feigned a sigh. "I had a good teacher." Their laughter mingled, a sound richer than any music from below. The bond between them had deepened into something unbreakable, a partnership built on bruises and trust, on vulnerability and strength. She had taught him the labyrinthine politics of Nyari nobles, the language of glances and silences. He had shown her how to let down her guard, to find strength not in armor, but in honesty. Their union had become a bridge between two worlds. No longer was she the isolated Empress, her every move scrutinized for weakness. Nor was Marcus merely the sentinel from a foreign planet, shadowing her every step. Together, they were something new, a living answer to those who had once tried to turn their alliance into a chain. The doors behind them slid open on a hush of air. A small figure barreled onto the balcony, her laughter pealing like bells. Lyra, their daughter, darted between the columns, her hair dark as her mother's, her eyes a sunlit amber. Her skin was pale, threaded with faint glowing lines, scars inherited and earned, a living symbol of a new era. "Papa!" Lyra shouted, leaping at Marcus. He caught her with practiced ease, spinning her around until she shrieked with delight. Ceres watched, a smile curving her lips, heart aching with a joy so fierce it almost hurt. Lyra clung to Marcus's neck, her small hands clutching at his shirt, her laughter brightening the dusk. "Careful," Ceres warned gently, though her voice was warm. "If you break your father, I will have to send for another." Lyra giggled, wrinkling her nose. "There's only one Papa. Besides, you'd never replace him." Marcus met Ceres's gaze over their daughter's head, his eyes soft with wonder. "See? Even the small one knows." Ceres pretended to consider. "She is wise for her age." Lyra stretched, pressing her glowing palm to her mother's cheek. "You're pretty, Mama. Even your scars." Ceres caught her daughter's hand and kissed her knuckles. "They remind me of what we survived, of who we are." A chime sounded from the comm panel inside. The city's peace was not without its demands. An alliance envoy had arrived, a new accord to be signed, another chapter in the fragile history they had forged together. Marcus set Lyra on her feet, smoothing her hair with a gentle hand. "Duty calls, little star." Lyra pouted, but Ceres knelt to cup her daughter's chin. "We faced these things together, remember?" Hand in hand, the family walked inside. The throne room was no longer a place of dread or loneliness. Marcus took his place at Ceres's side, their fingers entwined as they entered. The courtiers murmured, but their eyes held something new. Respect, perhaps even hope. Lyra stayed close, small, but unafraid, her head high. As the envoy approached, Saris felt Marcus's thumb trace slow circles over her skin, grounding her in the present. The treaty was signed with ceremony, but the true promise was in the glances, the clasped hands, the daughter who watched with wide, curious eyes. When duty ended, Saris and Marcus retreated to the gardens, Lyra nestled between them, safe and cherished. As Marcus lifted their daughter, spinning her until she squealed, Saris stood back and watched her family. A blend of Nyari and human, resilience and tenderness, the past and the future made flesh. The city sparkled beneath them, alive and peaceful. And Saris realized that this laughter, this love, was the true power she had fought for. She pressed her hand to Marcus's chest, feeling the steady drumbeat of his heart. Lyra tucked between them. In the starlight, their love shone as enduring as the city they had saved. The throne, once a prison, was now just a seat, nothing more than a vantage point from which to view what truly mattered. The real strength was here, in arms that held, in hearts that endured, in a love that had conquered every shadow. Saris traced the glowing scars on her skin, Marcus's arms steady around her, and Lyra's laughter echoing into the night. A harmony of hope that would outlast empires.